his spokesmen, as usual, have been trying to distance him from what is happening in Rivers State. That is their job, and I wish them luck. But they have to understand, and the president has to understand, that the perception out there in the world, not merely in the nation, but out in the world, is that he bears a vicarious responsibility, at the very least, for what is happening in Rivers State. My reference to Thomas Becket was therefore hopefully a little bit clearer. What happened was this, that in the absolute monarchism that obtained at that time, King Henry II found that the Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Becket, was becoming a little bit of a nuisance. And he made an exclamation, he exclaimed, shot out some words at random, which various versions of which have come down in history. Some say that what he said was, "Will no one rid me of this pestilential priest?" Others says, "Will no one rid me of this meddlesome prelate," etc., etc. The import is the same. And what he did, what happened after that, was that 4 knights of the court set out and went and attacked the Archbishop of Canterbury. They hunted him down, they took refuge in the cathedral, and they found him there, and they cut him to pieces. There are many parallels which bother me about that history and this one. You'll notice that the figure 5 keeps popping up. There are 5 legislators who seem to be at the, shall we say, the 5 fingers of a controlling hand, let me put it that way, in this affair. And 5 knights altogether were involved in the case of Thomas Becket. 4 did the actual butchering, while the 5th kept guard at the door. And after he'd been murdered, he then gave the coup de grace and then lopped off the top of his head. So historically, again, for those who are superstitious, we have a case of 5 operators carrying out the imagined will of the monarch, of the absolute monarch. And again, another parallelism. I've been asking myself, are we not moving towards absolute monarchism? Even when we're talking about not just a democratic dispensation, but a federal system of democracy. There are many worrying historical parallels. Actually, there's nothing new under the sun. Let me just put it this way. Nothing really new, but it's just that those of us who pay attention to these things, we constantly, we evolve the habit of recognizing certain parallels going on in details, in a large context, and even sometimes in the personalities of those who are involved. There are many ways of saying, will no one rid me of this pestilential priest? Or will no one rid me of this meddlesome prelate? You don't have to utter the words directly. There are forms of conduct which can convey or which can be interpreted. And I want to be very, very careful here, and I'm glad this is being recorded, so that if you misquote me, I will sue you. Better still, I'll come after you. Because I'm not laying direct culpability on anyone. I want to make that quite clear. But I'm saying that one can, by action or omission, establish certain forms of conduct in the minds of one's followers, all of which circle around the word impunity. There are certain ways in which you can convey to your followers, your officials, your court, that they can act with impunity. There are many ways in which, for instance, you can expose a prey and say that prey is available for plucking. Even silence, sometimes silence can do it when a certain moral action is required and that moral action is not taken. You take away a governor's plane under dubious circumstances. That plane has remained grounded for I don't know how many weeks now. Of course, we are dissociating the presidency from this act. The important thing is that a certain arm of government grounds a governor's carriage for one reason or the other. Now, even the council, the governing council, the court says, no, wait a minute. Let's have this man's plane released. Until now, you pretend that nobody has spoken. Nobody said anything. You're not even interested in seeing how one of your barons under a monarchical system, now one of your barons or dukes is able to function without his carriage. Now that kind of indifference creates an enabling ground for your followers, your officials, to take even further actions to humiliate or endanger that baron or that duke or what else, that knight. I'm using this parallel so that we understand that there's nothing strange going on. We know how monarchs behave. They can deny absolutely involvement in anything. But somehow along the way they have said, will no one rid me of this pestilential prelate? And then again, you can send your wife, the queen, to the barony. Send your queen to the barony. Say, go and attend a marriage there and take the entire security service of the court and go to that archbishop's domain and stay there for 11 days with the full security apparatus as if you are a parallel head of state or monarch. And you invest the place to such an extent that the baron in that area is not even allowed to move freely. He's stopped by an ordinary sheriff. He says, Baron, sorry, the queen is attending a wedding there, or is painting her fingernails over there. And he surrounded the place, closed off all avenues, so that even the baron of that domain cannot move. And yet the baron is responsible for security in that area, is responsible for governance. He must even send regularly to the central court a certain percentage of the revenue which he collects. But he cannot move around in his own domain, under his control. That is what we call creating an enabling zone, enabling atmosphere for that baron to be dealt with sooner or later. When even your queen can come and take over your area. No constitutional position, nothing. But she is able to enjoy the full security apparatus of the state, which progressively is being denied that baron. In this case, that governor. I read in the papers today that no tear gas was thrown into government premises. Let me say categorically, that is untrue. The premises, the governorship area, whatever it's called, was tear gassed. I'll tell you how I know. Because I had a running commentary on what was happening by somebody, a junior colleague who was in the governor's lodge at the time. He went there in connection, in fact, I was supposed to be there. He went there in connection with preparations for the World Book Capital celebration, which, as you know, is taking place in Port Harcourt. That's what took him there. And it was actually with the governor during what amounted to a siege of the governor's lodge. And he was tear gassed. They had to run and try and get water for their faces. So anyone who says that tear gas was not thrown into Amechi's lodge is either ignorant or is lying. Because I had a running commentary by that colleague who was there, since I couldn't be there. I was on the other line, or the other end of the telephone, when all the melee was going on outside. And the police who were supposed to be protecting Amechi were doing whatever they were. In addition, some of Amechi's security forces have been removed. This I have checked. I'm not saying he's left without any security whatsoever. And we're all sitting down here pretending that nothing is happening, pretending that Boko Haram, a very serious threat, is all we have to cope with, but the grounds under us are being eroded. I'm talking about the democratic ground on which we are supposed to stand. I'm laying this as on the vicarious grounds of responsibility of the presidency, because a number of actions or non-actions that is taken indicate quite clearly that somewhere very, if not at that very level, the very top, around him, there are those who are saying, will no one rid me of this meddlesome prelate? When the tear gas is thrown in, the next one may be a smoke bomb. And in confusion, where nobody sees anything and so on, an accident can happen. And we get back to the case of the unknown soldier, or in this case, maybe more likely, unknown policeman. Because not since the days of Adewusi, not since the notorious days of Adewusi, who constituted himself virtually the spokesman of the ruling party at the time, who sat on television and made pronouncements, declarations, defiant, insolent declarations. This Inspector General Adewusi, or whatever his rank was at the time, not since that period have we had a policeman like Umbu taking the stage, contradicting the governor in the most disrespectful way, as if he's not being paid from the coffers of this nation. We have a political policeman there. Just from his own mouth. It's not a question of what he did or what he didn't do. I have read his statements. You have a political policeman. And the governor has said, I want this man out. I'm the chief security officer. But no, he's still there. Is anybody surprised then that tear gas will be accidentally thrown into the governor's territory? So what are we waiting for? As I said, are we waiting now for a smoke bomb to be thrown there, and in the general darkness to find that we have lost a governor? Incidentally, King Harry II, he did penance after the murder because he was about to be excommunicated. I think he put on sackcloth and ashes and walked the streets of Canterbury while he was flogged symbolically by a number of monks and so on. And then he slept the night in the crypt of the murdered archbishop as a show of penance. The important thing was that they had got rid of that archbishop. There are thugs milling around the streets. I got a full description of what's been going on there. And if I hadn't been too busy, I would have been there myself, to witness for myself a scene that we well encountered before, being enacted before our eyes. I think it's important that we find some means of going there and taking evidence from the people around, just to show how close we are, either deliberately or through negligence, how close we are to existing under a feudal monarchy. This is a period when the president should be mobilizing everybody against some of the greatest menaces that this nation has ever faced, such as Boko Haram, for instance. This is a period when we're still mourning the butchery of our children in schools, and the president and his government have not found a solution. I'm not saying it's easy, don't misunderstand me, but the important thing is they have not found a solution. And this is where all energies should be directed. I won't mention corruption, that's become too boring. Let the FCC do its job. But where we are immediately concerned, the wastage of our future in the presence of these kids. The closure of schools, understandably. By the way, I don't criticize the governor for closing those schools. I'm just sad because it's a defeat. It's a defeat, however temporary, it is a defeat that schools have to be closed. The president is not worrying about that. I don't say he shouldn't go to China, but at least he shouldn't leave the country burning. Or at least the country shouldn't burn during a convenient absence.